Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening and good night. See ya.
Yep.
Uh,
Later.
welcome to the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. Your hosts are Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajedo. What's going on, dude?
Um, it's all about. See, now I can't go off on a rant on this. All right, let me. Well, I can too, but I'll do it anyway. Yesterday morning, get up as usual, and I noticed that the furnace fan is running a little slow, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that don't sound right. Something don't sound right. So I go in to the area or utility room where the furnace is just in time to hear it go rawr, 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 just start buzzing. That oh crap! So I run over to the thermostat and I shut it down completely. Give it a couple of minutes to cool down. I'm thinking, okay, what's going on? I turn it back on again and it goes fires up, and then all of a sudden buzz. Shut it off. The motor's fried on the blower fan on our furnace. Luckily, I know somebody who is a retired HVAC tech, and he had a bunch of sources and everything. My first thought was, oh man, this is going to be expensive to fix. And it's not cheap, but it could be worse. I've seen quotes from $750 to $1,900. Luckily, I gave him the model number and he traced a few sources down. It's on its way, and it was 300 and something dollars. So now I'm just waiting on FedEx. You hear me, FedEx? I'm waiting on you. So basically, we've been freezing ourselves to death overnight using the little space heaters that I usually use out in my shop. We got it up to 71, and that was fine. And turned them on and off to kind of maintain some temperature.
Yeah,
I'd like Hill to see my power bill,
yeah,
because when I got up this morning, it was 63 degrees in here. And it was like, that's a bit too chilly for me. It was 39 outside. Turn on the heaters, and it was probably, see, I turned it on at about 7 o'clock, and it was probably almost noon before it got up over 68 degrees. So, I mean, that's a lot of house to heat with two little bitty space heaters that I normally use out in the shed.
Oh,
You
so
know,
you did it for the whole house?
well, as much as I could, the living room and our bedroom, but back here where I'm at,
Yeah.
colder than a well digger's belt buckle. So, I'm okay right now. It is currently, what is it outside? It's currently 52. So that's not bad. By Oregon standards, that's still t shirt weather. But it's going to get cold. Well, the sun is fixing to go down. So we'll see what happens after about 8 this evening.
That's
So,
pretty crazy though, because
mm-hmm,
well, it's stuff breaks down all the time with
mm-hmm.
houses. There's so many little things that can.
Yeah.
It's not fun, and it's expensive now. And by the way, as far as expensive, everything's way more expensive now.
Yeah.
Like I went to the Walmart, and it's like I'm going to the Walmart more than usual.
Yeah. 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 It's
People gonna start calling me, "Hey, Eloy, welcome to Walmart." I didn't tell you my name. Oh no, we remember you from that one time.
well, that got me on a thing, and I really can't go off on a rant on this, because I don't know how old that motor is. This house was built in 1988. As far as I know, that's the original uh,
Motor.
blower motor. And if that's the case, I got no complaints at all. I mean, it sucks that it happened, but it lasted for 40 years, almost 40 years. But then we started having problem with the microwave oven, which is about 5 to 7 years old, somewhere in there. And the oven, it works absolutely fine. It's just when you push the button to open the door, it doesn't always want to kick it open. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'd hate like hell to throw away a microwave oven because of that. But I know that microwaves are just dangerous enough to where I'm not poking around in there. So it looks like we might be getting a new microwave oven. Now, a 30 years on a 30, 40 years on a motor versus 5 to 7 on a microwave. I know they don't cost $1,000, but still, come on, folks.
Yeah.
This planned obsolescence crap has its limits, you know?
Mm, for us, but for some reason, well, I mean, it's a bit of a problem, especially with the economy, like in terms of like buying power, where people have to re up on all sorts of stuff, and so it's kind of, stuff breaks that's brand new. Older stuff lasts longer. That's
Yeah.
in general.
Yes.
Older stuff that was made back in the day.
I firmly agree with you. There's a reason why you can still see 1955 Chevys driving down the street. You know, when was the last time you saw a 1997 Chevy? 1998, 1999, something like that. You know, they were built back then. They're not built now. Um, Jim Dockrell says they really need that right to repair laws enacted. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Now, there's nothing in the furnace that I can't find the manual on and repair, unless we're talking about compressed gas, and then in which case I'm calling the pro. I don't have all those tools or nothing like that. I don't want to play with that. Um, but I can swap out a motor. It's just an electrical connection. Um, the microwave oven, on the other hand, I uh, I know my limits. My limits are when it comes to electronics. I don't know what to touch and what not to touch, so I don't touch none of it. So I know my limits.
I wonder
But
if AI, if you asked it, I would like to repair the latch mechanism for this model of blah blah blah. What are my best options in the? I mean, obviously it's this assembly because you
mhm,
need to get in there, and then you have to find, if maybe there's a spring or something, whatever the case might be. But it could likely give you a general vicinity result,
mhm,
and I'll tell you what I did with using AI.
what's that?
I already knew the steps, but one thing about, so I already knew most of the steps, but I'll explain what I did. I had a problem with the neighbor's
Mhm,
water flushing ability,
mhm,
and the problem was that I had recently, within the last few months, already changed out the the ring, the wax ring,
mhm,
and placed the toilet after they pumped the septic.
mhm,
Like I paid for the septic. I myself then went and changed the ring.
mhm.
So I didn't equate that the ring would have any problems with it because it wouldn't flush proper.
Uh-huh.
So the option in my mind was that there's some sort of blockage along the line, the main line.
Mhm,
So I got down on out there and started to snake,
mhm.
putting my hand in that crap water with a glove on.
Oh yeah.
Still, I'm sideways because you're on the ground and your legs are bent and you're
Mhm,
getting up and down in positions that you're not, used to.
mhm,
Or I'm not used. Um, and some of that sort of like rock, soft rock buildup came
mhm,
out.
mhm.
So there was caking of that stuff,
Yeah.
and I did feel some stubbornness in the thing. So I took one of those bladders. I had a bladder that you stick in the pipes. I don't know if you've ever used them, but they're like this plastic thing that it blows up with the hose.
Mhm,
It's got a little hole opening so that the water shoots out on the other
mhm.
side, and
Yeah.
it just pumps out all the gunk or whatever.
Mhm.
But I did that from the outside in. No, which is fine.
Okay.
Um, but I'm saying the first thing I did was that because the other option, which I was aware of, but I wasn't sure. The problem is I wasn't touching the toilet because I
Mhm.
changed the gasket.
Yeah.
So if anything, there's some stoppage inside the line. I'll
In the
take it
pipe,
from the
yeah.
inside, even though it'll push it up,
Hmm.
but all that water, and then it'll. The
It'll
idea is
run
to
out.
break
Yeah.
it up. So I did that. I did it twice. The first time,
Hmm.
some gun came out, and the second time, uh, it blew.
Hmm.
The bladder went bam
Oh
because it wasn't
no.
the right size, but it's what I had in hand, and I was
Yeah.
trying to. I was like, well, why is this freaking toilet not flushing? I went back in and flushed, and it flushed a little bit better.
Hmm.
So it got rid of some of the gunk or this or that. I was like, oh, that's a good news. But I went to AI
Hmm.
and I listed all my issues that I was observing,
Uh-huh.
like everything. I listed and I did this and this is that, and I think this and it's like this and everything. And then I asked it, what are the best practices for me considering all the data that I have provided you?
Hmm.
And then it started to hone in on stuff. And I said, refine this, that, and the other. Like, so it's working with you
Hmm.
to give you ideas and stuff. In any event, I had a little list made out of it. And I said, well, should I do this? Should I not? Maybe I should just do this. Because I have options that I know of.
Yeah.
What would be the best to get my freaking ass in and out as quick as possible?
Hmm.
And it confirmed my suspicions. Well, actually, I had various things that it said, but I'll just finish up saying this. I went next door and I started to revise or review all the components of the toilet, and I don't know why, but the um the valve
Hmm.
was low, like almost closed,
Hmm.
so it was filling up slow. And I
Hmm.
freaking opened that thing right away. I was like, well, what the hell?
Hmm.
So they had it for some reason twisted almost shut.
Hmm.
Of course, it's not going to flow. And the water level was lower in the tank,
Hmm.
and I tried to adjust it. The freaking thing was broken. So I went and bought. So in other words, the AI helped me start. I removed the toilet, had to do a new thing. I pumped it from that side with a brand new bladder. It
Hmm.
was twisting sideways, getting the bolts on. I can't bend right. My arms twist and contort.
Yeah.
After all that, I was freaking destroyed, and
Yeah.
that's why I left you that message. Because, and by the way, right now, my body, my butt, my arms, my back, my neck, everything, it's as if I ran some sort of marathon or something.
Welcome to this side of the fence. Or no, this side of the hill.
Um,
Now you know why they call it over the hill, because we both crested it. We peaked in about our early 40s. And now it's just,
I love how you hitched me onto that ride so quickly without any
dude,
without
I
any.
identify with everything you just said. There's a reason why I don't get underneath the truck and change my own oil. It's like, no, I don't get. The only thing that'll put me on the ground is tripping. I don't crawl around under the house. I don't get underneath and change oil. It I just about need a massage to crouch down and put air in the tires. All right.
Yeah, it's some
It's that
painful stuff.
bad.
Um, but mostly it's not it's lack of exercising those muscles and stuff. Because if you did focus on a lifestyle that was more active in terms of those things, it would be less on you. Even
Maybe.
as you age, it'll be less on you. If you keep like limber or
Well,
whatever.
if you took care of your body when you were younger, that's possible. But I have a lot of damage to various joints and muscles and stuff. So, I mean, my knees, I sound like a bowl of Rice Krispies both directions. If I crouch down, I sound like one bowl of Rice Krispies, and I sound like the second bowl when I go to stand up. I creak and pop all over the place. So, I have joint trouble from the get-go. So that limits my ability to exercise to a certain point. Not completely. I can still walk, I can still get around, I can still do what I have to do. It's just the crouching and climbing. Up and down ladders, I'm done for the day. And the next day, I feel it. I pay the next day. That's why I don't get up on the roof anymore, because I physically can't handle it the next day.
Well, there's these exoskeletons that might become more. I can foresee because I've already seen some on
Hmm.
YouTube and this and that,
Yeah.
where a person wears this exoskeleton, allowing them to bend, stand, and the pound, the pounds per whatever is it's a relief for your body. So it's
Hmm.
like having an external, and you can move around and stuff.
Yeah. I I don't foresee that being cheap enough for me to buy in my lifetime. But I could be wrong. I mean, that could be the next thing. People wonder what's going to happen after the skateboard. It might be exoskeletons. Imagine people are doing parkour now. Imagine, Iron Man parkour.
Well, if you think about it, though, if it gets to that point, which I've seen, there are products, but if it gets to that point, why don't you just go ahead and send a freaking robot to do the job for you anyhow?
Yeah, Jamie Page says, "Oh, Festool makes something like that. I've seen it demoed. It's incredible. They are super expensive." Well, you paint it green and put Festool on the side of it. Yes, it's going to be expensive, Jamie. But your point's well taken. Yeah, and as to your point, I'm telling you, if it's possible at all for a robot to do your job, a robot will start doing your job.
I mean, what's the point? Like, let's say if I had, there's two choices. Let's say in whatever time period where robots are available, they
Hmm.
come in boxes. You just buy them at Harbor Freight or whatever. Like Harbor Freight will have their version of it.
Yeah.
Um, and you buy it, you bring it home, and you have the option of it fixing something around the house or you doing it because you're all about the traditional human way of doing it. In that context,
Hmm.
more people than not likely
Hmm.
will have the robot do the job.
Well, I'll give you an example. If I could find a robot that I could afford that would clean out my rain gutters and my downspouts, I would have one. If I could, you know, send it up a pole, drop it in the rain gutter, and have it do its thing, go down the downspout with a brush and come back up and go over to the next one, go down that downspout, come back up, I would do it because that's something that I would get use out of, you know.
You can
But
send it. You can send it to do groceries for you, and you can say, "Look,
see, that I
robot."
don't trust.
You
That I
can
don't
say,
trust.
"No, no." If they did everything like it's all set up, nothing to like it basically runs like an automobile does its job. It would
Hmm.
do its job. So you could tell it to go, "Hey, go down to the bakery and get me some loaves of bread." You could either go there or you could send this exo. In fact, it'll get to the point where they can represent you in court. So you'll say, "Look, we have a court date, but I'm too busy watching YouTube videos, so you're gonna be my stand-in." And you can even hear the court proceedings through a little device that connects to them. In fact, look, I need a vacation robot, but I don't really want to go, so I'm gonna send you to a full a
Yeah,
full
send your
extravagant.
robot to Mazatlan. Nah, no, that's not happening. Sorry, that's not happening. No, I still like to do some things myself, but and like I would not trust a robot to do my shopping for. I don't trust people to do my shopping for me. That's why I don't do that, oh, just fill out your order on walmart.com and our pickers will go around and annoy everybody getting in their way and pick your groceries and you can come pick them up or we'll deliver. No, I want to choose my own stuff. I know what kind of tomato I want.
Yeah, but the robot would know too.
No, the robot don't know my preference for tomatoes. It
Yeah,
doesn't know how firm I want it.
yeah, you can.
It doesn't know what I'm looking for with a chuck roast. It doesn't know what I'm that. No, I do that. I'll do that myself.
No, what I'm saying is, you're adding that limitation to the. Look, what I'm saying is this. Well, I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is that in the future, with all the stuff, the robot, you can have it know you in and out to the
I,
point where it knows all those things, and in fact, you can even see the look. What I'm saying is, the robot could get to the point where
oh,
you don't
no
have to
doubt
leave
it
your freaking
could.
house.
Oh, no doubt it could. I envision a day where grocery stores are a thing of the past, to where instead of shipping all this stuff to a store, it stays in the warehouse and it's just delivered to your home. That day is coming. It's not a question of if, it's a matter of when. But there are certain things that people are still going to want to do themselves. Like, I won't even buy clothes online. I go down and I try them on, because I don't want to get something that's four sizes too small because this company thinks that my size is a toddler.
There'll be a law
Mm-hmm.
at some point. This is a mental experiment. This is a thought experiment. There'll be a law at some point due to all the robots doing work for humans that stay at home to play video games, where they'll install with the newer models, uh, the face area is actually like a TV, and so they'll pass a law where it says, "Okay, Mark, you have your robot, but from now on, the new laws, everybody has to have the TV display the face of the owner. So you'll be your robot will be you, and then your face, so that it'll be identifiable and shit." Oops, sorry. um, um, that came out so natural. Um, and so I could obviously that's we don't even know any of that is true. It's just a pretend sort of thought, but I can see that as
Well,
or things like that occurring as time goes on and people have to legislate
it,
um,
it
problems.
it would have to have some form of ID and it would need to be registered. I mean, look at what they've done with cars.
Yeah,
You have to have insurance. You'll have to have insurance on your robot in case it hurts somebody, whether it's the robot's fault or somebody bumps into it and knocks it over onto a kid in a shopping cart. They'll have to have insurance. It'll have to have license plates, and then in 10 years from after this, you can get a personalized plate.
and
And,
people different things though. Like people like if like they're into dreadlocks, they'll put wigs on them and stuff.
oh no, there'll be samurai battle armor. Everything. Just think about what they're 3D printing now. If you had your own personal robot, wouldn't you want it to look like a Cylon warrior from Battlestar Galactica? With
Yeah,
the LED
yeah. I
with
don't
the
like the
LED
idea of a
eyes.
humanoid. I don't like the idea of a robot being there. It's creepy, but that's because I was born in the 20th century.
Yeah,
But people in the future are not going to have that same disposition as me. They're
yeah.
going to probably be like normal. So
Mhm.
they'll have a robot standing there staring you dead in the face while you're using the
Well,
bathroom.
dude, I don't even like these smart appliances. I was watching this video. I don't remember what it was. It's funny because he got off on a tangent, and the tangent was he had to go buy a new dishwasher. And so he looked up the ratings through Consumer Reports magazine on what's the best dishwasher. And consistently, it came back that one of these three Bosch dishwashers were the best. And he didn't want to spend $2,000 on a dishwasher. So he got kind of the middle of the road dishwasher from Bosch. Brought it home, installed it. Everything's great. He goes to use it just to do a quick rinse on some dishes. You have to download the Bosch app to run his dishwasher
Yeah, that sucks.
to access certain uh, features. There's not just a button that you can push that says rinse. No, you have to do that through an app on the phone.
Yeah,
And you can't just download the app and access your dishwasher. You have to go to Bosch.com, create a Bosch account,
yeah,
and register your dishwasher, then download the app.
yeah. It's a pain in the ass.
To me, you want to talk about conspiracy theories? I do not put it past a company, and I'm not accusing Bosch of anything. So, Bosch lawyers, stand down. You know as well as I do, I would not be surprised to see some unscrupulous company basically, we want to limit how many times you can use this dishwasher so that after like 6,000 hours, This chip deactivates the motherboard and your dishwasher don't work. Now you got to buy a new one. You know,
Yeah.
and Jim, um, right to repair would not help this because all they have to do is make the price. Yeah, you can repair it. We'll send you a new motherboard. It costs $50 less than a brand new dishwasher.
Yeah.
So at that point, you might as well just buy a new dishwasher. That's where we're going with this microwave oven thing. I do not like things that need an internet connection. There is absolutely no reason for a dishwasher to need an internet connection or a smartphone app. That's asinine. Now they want me to trust a self-driving car? Oh, hell no. I know how many times I reboot my computer in a month. Oh, hell no.
Yeah, it is kind of creepy, but the future's going to have, it doesn't matter what it is. Um, if it becomes commonplace or if that's what they push, people
Mhm.
start buying it. You know, there are
Yep.
exceptions to the rule, but when it's technology based,
You know
um,
what? If they want that as an option, that's fine. I don't need that. There, it does not require an internet connection to run a dishwasher. Been doing it since the inventions since the invention of dishwashers.
no,
Same thing with, you know,
I'm saying that if there's no other one, if there's no other dishwashers at some point available other than the ones that do what you're saying,
mhm.
you either go without a dishwasher or you join the team. You know what I'm saying? It's
Or
like,
you're that smart manufacturer that doesn't use any of that shit and doesn't add any of that crap to it, and you cater to all the people like me who don't think you should have to ask your smartphone permission to use your dishwasher.
well,
You know.
if you think of just 20 years ago, we were all concerned about anonymity in terms of not letting people know what our names were, what our accounts were, what our passwords were, like all sorts of. And now
Hmm.
we've got like a list of passwords. You have to input all in order to get into anything. You have to input all the information about you.
Hmm.
So look how that changed in a short span. So
Hmm.
people can
Yeah.
change to accept much of anything if you
And
think about it.
and I will agree with that. There is still a certain percentage of people who won't like it, but if they see they have no option, they have to conform. It's kind of like light bulbs. You can't find an incandescent bulb that'll go in, your overhead fixture. It's now all either LED or CFL. And remember all those years they were saying, oh, LEDs will last 100,000 hours. They'll last this long. They'll last that
They
long.
don't.
They don't, because the LED bulb manufacturers figured, why would we want to sell somebody something one time? If they can get 4 years use out of it, like an incandescent bulb, they'll happily buy another bulb. Well, we have to buy another bulb, but we're not doing it happily. I'm here to tell you, you know.
Yeah,
So it could last 100,000 hours, but the manufacturer don't want it to last 100,000 hours,
that's right.
you know. Uh, oh. Jim Dockrell says, we have two dishwashers here. One's 64 years old, one is 65 years old and still work fine. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'm also a dishwasher.
yeah, yeah. I'm sadly to report I am not. Linda handles all that stuff. But I think she would probably, I don't know if she would get mad at me, but she would be like, what do you want? If I were to go in and load the dishwasher, she'd be like, what do you want? You've got something up your sleeve. What are you after? You know?
I
So,
can't have Vigo do it.
yeah. Yeah.
That would be that would cause pause.
Mm-hmm. R. I see what you did there. And you should be ashamed. Uh, okay. Jim says, right to repair involves third party shops, though. If a third party decides that they want to get involved in it, yes. Which means they can source parts outside the manufacturer. Yes, absolutely right. if a manufacturer decides if it's worth investing to provide that part. It's kind of like there are certain HP printers, HP lawyers stand down. There are certain HP printers that will tell you your ink is low, even though there's still ink in there.
Yeah.
And it will not let you use the printer until you replace that ink cartridge. And you can't go out and buy just Office Depot brand ink cartridge. You have to
Yeah.
buy theirs because it's got a chip in it.
Yeah. It's such a.
Uh-huh. So Jamie's talking about I watch a guy on YouTube that buys written off supercars, fixes them up. Lamborghini have made it so you have to use their battery and no other, and it costs over £1,500, and there's a waiting list. Yeah, yeah. Let's see, £1,500.
Yeah, but none of us own a Lamborghini, as far as I am aware. That's kind of a different level.
True. That's $1,950. So yeah, a battery for your car costing you $1,900.
Yeah, that's Lamborghini
I
people.
figure if you can buy a Lamborghini, you can afford $1,900 for a battery, but it better come with hot and cold running blondes. I'm telling you that right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's for a different level of economic. Ooh,
Yeah,
wait, I
yeah,
pulled with my toe, and the light fixture almost slid off of this. I
keep
was
your
farting
feet off.
around.
See, that's why your mother always told you get your feet off the table.
I've got an LED
Yeah,
that's sitting on a speaker, but it's a long one that's supposed to go hanging on the wall.
yeah.
And I almost tipped it over, and it almost fell.
I just put LED bulbs in the overhead fixture, but I did replace this fixture. It used to have three spotlights, one of those old 1970s, 1980s things that went up in the ceiling and
Yeah,
had the three little hoods.
yeah,
And three bulbs is it's no use in here, so I just took it down and put in one that has one light fixture.
we could still get incandescents though, can't we?
Nope. There are certain bulbs that are incandescent. I believe oven bulbs and refrigerator bulbs are still incandescent, I believe. But I think that's the only variables because extreme temperatures.
Yeah, they are controlling that industry
Mhm.
by doing just that you're saying.
Yeah.
There's no reason an LED bulb couldn't last for
Well,
like
they
30
they
years.
they convinced us that compact fluorescents were the way to go, that they save money. Well, over incandescents, yes, they do. Problem is they take 15, 20 minutes before they heat up enough and are efficient. So you turn on a fluorescent bulb and then go have breakfast and come back and then the light's on.
Yeah.
But I am a believer in LED bulbs. I mean, I know they cost more. And yeah, you have to replace them about as often as you have to replace incandescent bulbs.
Or
But
more sometimes, dude.
yeah, it just depends on the bulb. You're absolutely right.
Because I've had that experience. It's like, what the hell?
But they are so much cheaper to run. My electric bill loves LED bulbs. And I don't have to holler about leaving lights on anymore. That was always the two big arguments in my house growing up as a kid was turn off the light when you're not in the room, and I still do it. And close the damn door. You're not heating the whole
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, all right, fine. But the that translated later on when I started paying the electric bill. I'm like, oh, that's what Dad was talking about. Oh, okay, all right, I get it.
There was a reason for it.
Yeah,
It wasn't just to make
but
our lives as kids more.
when you're 9, you don't care about that. You know.
Yeah, but it's true. And by the way, those old folks back then
Mm.
lived enough time where they saw the prices of things go expensive,
Oh yeah.
just like us now. So when you so you appreciate the cost of stuff, more.
Hmm.
We're more cautious. Like, I used to purchase whatever the hell I wanted, um, without considering, because I didn't have the extra things to cover.
Hmm.
And then, you start getting more responsibility the older you get, and you start realizing, well, wait a second,
Money comes from somewhere. Yeah.
you know,
Yep. Yeah. Adulting is not easy, but what can you say? It beats the alternative. So, let's see here. Jim says you want to be able to get incandescent bulbs at the farm store for brooding feeders. I've not looked. Um, I really don't know. So,
going
um,
back to the AI.
we also grew up with 60 amp service to the house. Yeah, yeah, 50 or 60 amp, good old knob and tube electricity.
We still have the tube, or the knobs and tubes or whatever, in our attic next door.
Hmm. Oh wow,
That's from that. I mean, it's not working,
right. It's
but
been
the
decommitted. Yeah,
leftovers are still the porcelain or whatever,
yeah.
where the wires would go through.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's how those people lived, back then.
Well, it was new back then. That was the state of the art. That was just what it was. You know, you
I
had
mean,
that or you had nothing.
yeah, we're talking like 1930s and 40s over
Hmm.
here when that was in use. I'm sure it's older
Yep.
than that, but
Yeah. Oh yeah.
um, so I wanted to mention, um, that the AI, I've
Hmm.
been really appreciating the use of it, asking it questions and this and that. I used it for a different application, earlier,
Hmm.
which I wanted to chronologically figure out the movies that I saw as a kid with my
Hmm.
dad, my mom, and such, and what was happening in Miami at the time.
Hmm.
So my earliest movies that I remember sitting and watching, I closed the application, so I can't remember now, but were things like, the early Death Wish, not the
Hmm.
earliest Death Wish, but like maybe Death Wish 2 or 3, whatever happened in the early '80s with that,
Hmm.
whatever movie. So I did a list of that, and I asked it to list the months in which each thing, and I can remember going to see those movies in the months that it came out.
Hmm.
And we in the '80s, I went to a lot of movies with my parents.
Yeah.
Um, but then I asked it, well, can you please attach along with the movies what was happening in Miami, Florida, news wise, according to the months of those years?
Hmm.
And it turned out that helped me too, because I remember as a kid, the riots. The earliest thing was the McDuffie riots, where a young African American was, you know, he got beat up and this and that. I think he lost his life. I'm not sure about that part, but and I remember being in Little Havana. So you had Little Havana, and then there's a bridge across the bridge over the river into the northwest section, and then you have the town where most of the African American population was and such. Then my grandfather worked on the other side of the bridge,
Hmm.
you know, and so he was coming home, and I remember that we were in Little Havana visiting my grandparents, and it was my grandmother, my mom, and my dad and me
Hmm.
waiting for my grandfather to get home, and they were worried because the news was
Yeah.
saying the fires in there, because it was fires and people on the
Yeah.
streets were standing in the streets
Yeah.
flagging cars down for help,
Hmm.
but they weren't asking for help. They were hoping that people would stop so they can mug them.
Hmm.
And so my grandfather was waiting, and I was little, and we went outside waiting, looking, and then we see his car. I remember this, and
Hmm.
he parked normal. Everybody was worried
Yeah.
because they were killing themselves. They were beating hell out of everybody in.
Hmm.
They were going to town on everybody, to blaming the
Hmm.
system. and my grandfather comes up in his Pontiac Lamaze,
Hmm.
bone color, yellow bone color car.
Hmm.
It was a tank. It was awesome. 350 horsepower
Hmm.
written on the side. He parked his car where he usually parks it,
Hmm.
and I've never said this, but I'm a little kid, like little,
Yeah.
and everybody's standing there, and my grandfather's bumper had some residual
Damage.
blood.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. I went all the way, didn't I?
Hmm.
Um, because they were trying to flag him down,
Hmm.
and he probably said, "Not tonight," you know. Well, not probably. That's exactly what he said. And I remember them wiping down the bumper,
Hmm.
and it was commotion. But I was a little kid, and then eventually we went back home to Sweetwater once we knew that he was safe at home.
Hmm.
And my grandfather got out of the car. You remember the impressions,
Hmm.
normal, and he explained what had happened. And there was fires.
Yeah.
Um, so imagine that I was in the middle of, not in the middle there, but I was there at the time when the
Hmm.
and the event affected many people. Um, and the list starts with the Duffy McDuffie riots,
Hmm.
and it coincides with certain movies from the 80s that I saw, from 1980 that I saw.
Hmm.
And so I it helped me place through AI. It helped me play. I mean, I could do it on my own sitting with a computer, but I'm saying it's automating it for you.
Yeah. Getting
So
it done a hell of a lot faster than you could do it yourself.
right, so it was helpful.
Hmm.
So long story short, throughout the 80s, of all the movies that I saw in between all of them,
Hmm.
Miami got from bad to worse.
Yeah.
It was the premier murder capital. Um, there were the morgue could not fit more bodies,
Hmm.
so they had to buy iced like wagons.
Hmm.
Imagine that.
Well, you've been overshadowed by Memphis, Tennessee, and a couple of places in Michigan. But yeah.
And the drug cartel thing also. So what coins in the 80s, according to the movies, this is
Hmm.
just the two data points that I was asking for it to help me with,
Hmm.
was movies that I saw in the months that they popped up into the thing, and what was happening in that month at that time.
Hmm.
And throughout the 80s, it's basically the news
Lawless.
headline. The news headline was like it was like death and destruction, dude.
Hmm.
But here's the funny thing. Obviously, I was a kid. I did not personally make any connection to just other than that McDuffie riot thing. It also states the Marielle boat lift,
Hmm.
which happened in 80.
Yeah.
It flooded Miami with over 125,000 people,
Hmm.
just overnight.
Hmm.
And that increased the crime as well. These people, many of them were normal people trying to escape, but many of them also were people that, um,
Well,
based on all
Castro opened the prisons. I mean, he opened his prisons and shoved them on boats and said, "Get out of here."
right, and a lot of them had problems, just because when you're living in a place like that,
Hmm.
um, you're setting up the population to grow in an environment that can cause a lot of mental issues.
Hmm.
That's another unforeseen aspect of all this.
Well, and just bad people in general, just some bad people.
Yeah, well,
Some of them jumped on.
I'm all of that we're saying, but I'm saying that this mental aspect is
Hmm.
key, because when you are put in a situation where it's not normal in terms of allowing a young person to develop their mind with the
Right.
correct level of interaction with others, and everything's based on survival or
Yeah.
or when those factors are involved in the raising of a young kid, you're going to create unhealthy adults in those terms
Hmm.
to a certain degree. Some people can manage it, but like you and I, we don't know what we would have been in terms of our patience, our
Oh
thought
no,
process, if we would have grown up in, I don't know.
indoctrination. Yeah.
Right. So all these factors, but those people came through here, and then the drug cartels
Hmm.
over here and everything. But I didn't witness any of that
Yeah.
in terms of that wasn't my reality. My reality was me watching movies and this, and that. So it was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the earliest memory I have about anything like that were the Watts riots down in
Oh yeah,
Southern California. But I
yeah.
was 5 years old and I didn't live in Southern California. So I heard about it on the news. I didn't know what I was hearing. I was a little kid. But
It didn't affect you, let's say.
no. But then the Berkeley riots and all the protests in the San Francisco Bay Area, they were right on our street.
And you got
I
to
mean,
see that.
right in front of my house. I remember our couch was right below the front window. So I would kneel on the couch, put my arms on the back of the couch, and watch out the window. And I can remember my mother grabbing me by the neck of my shirt and pulling me off of that couch. Get out of that window. You're going to get hit with a rock or something like that. So, yeah, it was a wild time, you know.
And we saw more of that a few years ago
Yeah.
with certain riots and stuff. Something similar, at least.
Now, Linda says I was in high school during the Watts riots and I lived in SoCal then. It was a scary time. Yeah, I bet. I bet.
Well, these things, like focusing on riots and stuff, um, and the tensions at the social level, cultural level, in that scale,
Hmm.
are reactions to things from the past. Whether one would think that they're reasonable or not, which wouldn't be it. There's no reason to damage a person that hasn't done anything to you
Hmm.
just because they fit into a category and this and that. Um, but
Yeah.
the reason that that exists and that those things happen is because in reverse, other things happened that hitched a ride along, you know, generationally. And anytime a situation where an officer's involved or this or that, um, in certain communities,
Hmm.
they it goes from 0 to 60, in no
No,
time.
no doubt. But as we saw up here in Portland, I hesitate to say locally because it's 270 miles away from us. There were a lot of opportunists that hitched onto that as well,
Oh yeah,
where
no doubt.
they saw a mob that they could blend into, but they can get destructive and they could, break windows and loot stores and things like that. They had nothing to do with any kind of protest whatsoever. They just knew that that mob could be used as cover.
No, it's no more justified whether or not it's due to protest,
Well, no,
whether
no,
they're
no,
hitching
understood. But
whether
what
they're
I'm
hitching.
getting, yeah, I understood. I'm just saying that a good percentage of the destruction was caused by opportunists who were just looking for an excuse.
No,
They were looking for a reason to do something,
I understand that, but I'm saying that
So,
at the base level of causing damage to property, life, and so on,
yeah.
whether they're hitching a ride in order to cause mayhem because they're looking to steal or do damage or anarchy,
Mhm.
or whether they're truly indignant, and therefore out, and about. Once it crosses that line, I know that you know this because these are
Mhm.
like fundamental things, but somehow there's people that are willing to um, go the extra mile when it
Sure.
comes to you know um, uh, correcting things that are wrong, but on people that are innocent, or none the wiser to any
Yeah.
connection other than you assume that you're the target, that person's the target because you basically lump them into, whatever. But What I'm saying is that these things exist based
Hmm.
on things that happen to. So, like for instance, if certain groups, I'll just say like this, um, never faced certain types of obstacles that
Hmm.
would, at all, and their reality was one of sameness with the rest of society
Hmm.
throughout the 1800s, let's say, into the 20th century, they would have no way to react because they never were treated poorly. So there would be no historical notion in their heads as something, marginalized or something pushed to the side. So they couldn't grab onto, something like that.
Right.
Um, they would have no context in order to react to anything. So, so what I'm getting at is that these things occur based on leftovers from the
Well,
distant past.
I'm sorry, I just don't believe that. But I think a lot of it is. Well, I'm not even going to get into that because we're getting political, and I don't want to get political. Um, but I I think that's a good excuse. But I think it's just that it's an excuse.
I'm not excusing it. I'm
Yeah.
making a
No, I didn't mean
psychological,
on your. I didn't mean on your part.
but I'm making a psychological. Just okay. So I'm making a psychological evaluation. So it's just it could be anything. To be honest with you, like for instance, you can't expect, um, like people in South Florida, um, you know, exile community Cubans,
Hmm.
not to be affected by the history that occurred to them to the
I know.
degree that even though I was never born in Cuba,
Hmm.
um, nor experienced any of the direct situations that my folks and my grandparents had,
Hmm.
um, to the degree of abandoning everything that you had in the past, your home house. I mean, literally, I didn't have any of that notion, and yet that was handed down to me as part of the history.
Okay.
So, although this example isn't an example of me or the Cuban community lashing out in any violent way,
Hmm.
it is an example of, because it's not parallel in that way, but it is parallel in this way, that the past reflects how people interact in the present, because unsettled business gets pushed forward and forward in ways that we might not expect. So, as far as excuse, those people on a person to person might be using it as an excuse for ill, um,
Hmm.
but the psychology is all screwed up too, because things are coming. So one of the things is like news. You know, news has a way of condensing information so that people watching it see this is good and that's bad depending on the channel that you. And so people end up with a simplistic uh, ending to the story, and they make the decision this is good, that's bad, and they leave out all the details. So basically it's a little bit like that. As generations go, narratives are simplified.
And
People
twisted and manipulated.
and people retain what is offered them, and they don't necessarily reflect, and these things get pushed forward and stuff. I'm just saying that every action has a reaction. That's not
Hmm.
a justification. It's like people react, and they seek
Well,
any degree of vengeance, let's say.
now you're right about that. And again, but again, about the only thing we can control is our reaction. We
Well, yeah.
can control our reactions, and it took me years to figure that out.
Well, yeah, you can
So,
control about a lot of stuff.
so
Yeah, you can control about a lot of stuff. I mean, what what fault is it, as I've often mentioned, that one guy that may be wearing the same shirt in some diner somewhere has the fault of that something somewhere 300 miles, 400 miles, 1,000 miles away
Yeah, it's not connected at all. Yeah.
with a similar shirt just because they have a similar feature.
Mm-hmm.
you know, do we cast, that's not the way we work, but that's our understanding from our perspective based on our history, culturally and otherwise. But culturally is key because, I don't have any idea what it means to be marginalized and this and that, like in certain, like there's no context for me. But
Well,
if I had context and it was personalized, then I might, you know, have some sort of other thing going on. So, we're a
yeah,
product of our situation and our upbringing, is what I'm saying.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yep. No doubt about that. Because that's all we are. We're a collect. We are a collection of our experiences. So, but we also have perspective.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
like, for instance, the Cubans, when they first got here,
mhm,
you had the exile Cuban community, and they had a particular reason for being here. And as time went on, this group that were professionals, many people were just average, regular, not necessarily professionals. Many were just like normal level, medium income family, just like here, the majority, um, or to whatever degree. But many of them were professionals, enough so, with these thousands and thousands coming,
mhm,
before the
mhm,
Mariolito, that they quickly started to replicate their behaviors on the island.
mhm,
Some of their behaviors was to erect businesses,
mhm.
get into law firms.
And it only makes sense. It only makes sense.
But the point, right, because they're copying what they knew.
Yeah,
They're not going to
you
do
got to
what
make
they,
a living. Yeah.
well, no, psychologically, the tools available to them
Hmm.
was what they brought from where they came from. So
Yeah.
they just replicated what they had
Hmm.
because that's the tools in their box anyways.
Yeah.
Like, they wouldn't necessarily open up a store that's something more typical of, like, I don't know, the Irish up in Boston might have some sort of
Well,
store,
no,
or
understood. You're gonna go with what you know. And if you were a store owner over there and you have the opportunity to start a store here because you see a need that you can fill, why wouldn't you do that? Of course you are.
right, you know the way to do it because you've
You know
already
how to
done.
do it. You also know what the clientele's gonna want.
But on the other hand, as that generation entered into stabilizing themselves,
Hmm.
their kids, to whatever degree, not everyone,
Hmm.
some of them got connected with organized crime.
Hmm.
Um, and those people started doing drug business,
Yeah.
and they would reach out to people that were actually officials, and they would proceed to try to corrupt them successfully,
Hmm.
to the point where people in the courts, people in the law enforcement arm, not all of them, like
Hmm.
everything else,
Sure.
but certain key people started to work with
Hmm.
these people in a sort of whatever you might want to call it. And now you had this reality that there's this certain element within the community that is on about doing crime for a profit,
Hmm.
and it makes the rest of the community, and they would voice it, not look good. And
Yeah.
so they would voice it. It's sort of like what the Italians experienced.
Hmm. In New York. Yeah.
So you have elements, so you
In
can't really
Boston.
control. So this is going to your point where those decisions are personal decisions
Hmm.
of people. You want it the easy way out, um and you want to make money, and you'll do anything for it. Now you have this type of person, all under the umbrella of a category called
Yeah.
the Cuban exile community. The point I'm trying to make is that you have this category that
Hmm.
envelops many people, but
Hmm.
many people, even though they live under this category, are responsible for their individual behaviors.
Right.
And some people will do very poor things in
Hmm.
order to make a buck.
Yeah. Well, that's in every category.
Well,
That's in every category. So
well,
yeah.
that's my point. So like, with the fires and stuff, I don't know this too, but I'm sure that we could find out it, or I can ask AI later and see what links it could, or I could do Google, whatever. But I'm sure, almost feel confident that it wasn't the case during those riots in Miami, that everybody in that community, or even the majority, although it looked like it, there's footage from it. It looks, it looks insane. I mean, it's but I tend to feel that, or think that most people were actually in their houses and stuff,
Yeah.
not doing crazy stuff.
Dude, it's always that way. It's always that way. It's never everybody. It's
Right.
always a small percentage. It's a minority, but they affect the majority,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. For
Yeah.
every guy out in the middle of the road screaming and waving a torch or a pitchfork or whatever they were brandishing, there's 5 or 6 in the house going, "What the hell is going on in my street?" You know, get under the bed, hide in the closet, kids, whatever. We don't know what the hell's coming through the window.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt in my mind about that.
Yeah. I think it's fair to think that
But
it's not the majority in
but they're
any case.
but they're always the loudest percentage, and they're the percentage that's going to get put on the news first
Yeah.
because it's sensationalism, and sensationalism sells almost as good as sex, but sensationalism sells.
Yeah.
You can always tell when it's been a relatively quiet year because the press has to have something. They have to have something to gin people up about, to get people up in arms about.
That's
When
when they
it's a
bring out. That's when they bring out the aliens.
well, no, that's when they break out things like Lyme disease. There was a year, it's been back in the 90s now. You couldn't turn on the TV without hearing about Lyme disease, and it was going to kill everybody. And then it was bird flu. And then it was a flesh eating virus. And then it was shark attacks. I remember shark attacks on the East Coast.
Yeah, I remember too as a kid.
There has to be something sensational there to get you to come back to that newscast. We want you at 5:30, 6, and 11. And we're going to tease spectacular, sensational stories to get you to watch all 3 of those.
Yeah.
And it sells. It works.
It these things that you're these are narratives. So we can look at it like this: the narratives that are put out by the news
Mhm.
come into the public consciousness. People internal discuss it and internalize it, and it becomes true in their
Mhm.
minds. Um, so, but maybe what becomes true in their minds is not the full picture. No, more than likely,
Mhm.
but still, they operate. People, the public at large, now has a memory of
Mhm.
something that is not a complete memory of what happened. It's what the news gave you,
Yes.
and then that's how people are nudged in one
Mhm.
direction or the other.
Yep.
Um, so we have highlights of everything in the negative,
Mhm.
especially. I asked AI and it gave me all these negative things.
Mhm.
I could have asked it for,
Good news.
I just said news and it
Mhm.
chose to give me the highlights, but it was a big deal. I mean, there
Mhm.
were people being found in cars and bombs
Oh, no
exploding.
doubt. No doubt. The coverage would have you believe that that was all over everywhere, that it
And
was
I didn't,
happening in front of your house.
yeah, and I didn't, I'm telling you, I grew up in the 80s as like not
Mhm.
really considered. Would see the news, but
Mhm.
I'm thinking, well, I'm out with my friends and nothing's the matter. And,
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
I didn't see any of that,
Mhm.
but there was a lot of people being pulled from cars that were just like, and cars blowing up
Mhm.
in Miami. So you had in that time and prior,
And it
but
was it was it was turf wars from the drug cartels, wasn't it?
there were a few things happening. Yeah, there was killings based
Mhm.
on the drug situation, and then you had um, political um, killings.
Hmm.
So you had people that would place bombs under cars
Hmm.
in order to get rid of political enemies,
Hmm.
because you know it's the Cuba thing, with one group against the other, and
Yeah.
they come in to, what do you call it, infiltrate,
Hmm.
and they try to take over businesses, or they try to become iconically, pro Miami Cuban,
Hmm.
anti-revolutionary people, but when what they're doing is actually, trying to sabotage Cubans here,
Yeah.
um, and all that stuff. So all that stuff was going on,
Hmm.
and even though I would hear about it, hear my parents and this and that,
Yeah. You weren't seeing it. Yeah.
no, I could go out and, oh mom,
Hmm.
by the way, in the midst of all these explosions and this and that, mom, I'm going to my friend's house and stuff. It says, okay,
Yeah.
be back before it gets dark and stuff or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of, but now if you ask AI, and your curiosity ends at where my curiosity froze at for the moment,
Hmm.
what are the highlight news? It's going to give you the worst.
Of
And
course.
how about all the other positive things?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
this is another thing, if we're not willing to dig deeper. So I know that I live that way, but like if a person sometime in the future, so from now, says, give me the highlights, and I'm going to write a book about Miami, and I'm going to use all the information that, well, they're curious. it If they don't dig enough to say, well, this is the good stuff and that's the bad stuff, the easy
Well,
out is that all this bad stuff was
well,
happening.
not only that, if it's only the bad stuff that's being reported, that's the only information out there.
Yeah, you would have to have the curiosity to bust open doors and really research and see the balance of
Hmm.
everything. So on the first level, you're gonna get that you're saying, the crazy news
Hmm.
that sells.
Yeah. Well,
So, but this leads us. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm gonna demonstrate that. Jim says killer bees and murder hornets. I remember those stories as well. But Jim, murder hornets was the most recent. Okay. Can you tell me anything else that was going on when the murder hornets was the big news story? Because I
Bees were
sure can.
disappearing.
Well, it was all had to do with the murder hornets.
Oh,
So, what can you tell me anything else that was going on during that time? Because I can't think of anything.
I think that's the time when the lizard people were on the.
We're looking at like 2018, 2019, something like that. So,
I can tell you when the lizard people really took off. I can tell
when
you.
when when we did that episode about it.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. Cutting your elderly neighbor's lawn does not make headlines. Yeah, exactly. And neither does uh, running your snowblower in their driveway. Not running your slow snowblower in their driveway is more likely to make the news. Look at this cheapskate. He wouldn't even spend the 15 cents in gas to take care of his neighbor's driveway when he had the snowblower out. You know?
It is true though. At the same time, that news is things that stand out.
Hmm.
There is that, but there's a double-edged sword with it, because when people consume news and there's all this negative stuff, you could start to get the illusion very powerfully. I know it's affected me in my life, but I know the difference. But even
Hmm.
though I know the difference, it doesn't change the fact that it affects me.
Yeah.
When you have back-to-back negativity
Yep.
that you're being fed, you start to see you start to become a hammer looking for nails, let's say.
Oh, exactly. We would visit Linda's relatives down in Southern California, and the first 15 minutes of the news was gang shooting after gang shooting after gang shooting. And now the weather with Barbara,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like, well, yeah, everything's going to hell. Merry Christmas, you
But
know?
it is a double-edged sword, Mark, because at the one side we need to know the highlights of what's going on,
Hmm.
but at the other end, so that's the good part in terms of we need to be informed of like what the hell, but
Hmm.
At the worst side, at the dirty side of that double edged sword, is that we end up giving the population ends up getting this negativity stuff,
Hmm.
and that's not good either, or not
No,
good at all.
the TV stations down in Southern California finally stopped doing it. It used to be if there was a police chase, immediately they would break into programming and follow it live with helicopters and the whole ding dong thing,
Yeah,
and just go for the duration until smarter heads prevailed and they figured out people were doing that so that they could be on TV.
yeah.
Then they stopped broadcasting it and it kind of died down.
I saw one
Okay.
when I was in LA.
Okay. Linda says murder hornets was a thing in 2019. Okay. So the pandemic took over for the murder hornets. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha. And
yeah.
boy, did they have fun with that. That was a godsend to them.
They do manufacture, or I can't say that. It feels,
They come that close.
yeah, it feels that way.
They
Yeah,
come that close. There was a local talk show host down in Nevada who, when the whole it was after 9/11 and the whole TSA thing got going, he was working at a station in Texas, and his boss convinced him it was good investigative reporting to they booked a flight, and he went through TSA metal detector with a wrench in his pocket just to see what would happen. There's a reason he no longer lives in Texas. It was a major to do. I mean, court and fines and everything. The radio station paid for it all, but he got talked into doing it as a investigative report. Now that is manufacturing news. I'm sorry. You want to know what it's like? Go up and interview the people. Ask if you can stand back and watch. Nope, won't do it. So let's see. See, I went to the USA on a road trip in 2019 and went to a place called Eloy. That was a big deal.
yeah.
That
It's some
was
out a train station somewhere.
was that New Mexico or was that Arizona, Jamie? I know where you're talking about.
It's a train station somewhere where it used to be some sort of like waiting station or
Hmm.
something like that. That has the name Eloy,
Hmm.
and I think we looked up the reason for it being named that. It's been a while,
Yeah.
but well, my name isn't that. It's rare in terms of, or it's not common in the United States necessarily,
Hmm.
but it's the same. It's a variation on Elijah,
Hmm.
um, and stuff like that.
Yeah. In the Latin world, it's not uncommon. I do know that.
Yeah, um, it's basically a version of Elijah. You
Okay,
know,
there you go. Arizona. It's a small town. Uh, Calling it a small town is giving it props that it hasn't quite earned. But yes, you're right.
it's just one of those
It's like
places.
one building. But yeah.
It's one of those places on the side of the road.
The only place smaller that I can think of is a place called Two Guns, which used to be one building, and there is a freeway off ramp for it for Two Guns. I can't remember if it's Arizona or New Mexico now for some reason. But the building that was there burned down. So now all it is you have this exit, and then there's a big vacant lot with a foundation in it. And it's like they built an interstate off ramp and on ramp for that.
In
You
its
know,
day, it was probably something.
well, it was a gas station and restaurant, but it also had a post office just for the name Two Guns.
I
Okay,
mean, um,
so
one side thing about all this that I was actually thinking that, and I brought it in. I'm gonna bring it in now because I think it matches.
Mhm.
somewhat, um, is that I'll ask you the question, see what you
Oh,
say.
okay.
Is the world getting less? Oh, wait, let me say it this way: is the world, in your perception, getting more chaotic and um, just nuts, or not?
I don't think it's getting any more chaotic. I just think we find out about it quicker. I think with the 24-hour news cycle, you hear about, for instance, the 7.0 earthquake that happened in Myanmar. You hear about that today, right now, almost in real time.
Yeah,
The buildings hadn't stopped shaking when you heard about it.
yeah.
And with everybody and their brother carrying a video camera around now, it's real easy to get footage immediately. So when you have something like um, a hurricane, and then you have something across the globe, a ferry sinks with filled with passengers, and you hear about this war and you hear about this accident, it's easy to get bombarded with all this information. I just think, I don't know that the world is any more chaotic. I just think we know about it faster and we get it from more sources.
Do you think that I'm departing now from what I wanted to keep talking about, just to explore this? Do you think that, based on this immediate access, that people use it more to get their messages across in terms of political figures and news outlets and so on, that
Some
they
of them
know?
do.
One, let me finish the thing. Now that they know that each person in their pockets, they have these phones that they can connect with instantaneously, and you know do you think that that ability and usage of this medium increases chaos in terms of, or not?
It could be. But it depends on what your definition of chaos is. If you're talking about some stupid challenge where people are running out in the middle of traffic, yeah, that could cause chaos.
No, I'm saying in general. Are
But
we going from simplicity
no,
to chaotic?
no, because I don't think it was ever really simplicity. You were just talking about Miami in the 80s. It's pretty damn chaotic, although you didn't see it in your daily life. But if everybody within a 50-yard radius of one of those cars on fire had their phone out filming it, it would seem a lot more chaotic than you remember it.
Right.
There's still a bunch of evil stuff going on in the world. I think now it's just coming at us from so many different sources. It's harder to avoid it. You used to have to either read the newspaper or watch the news to get this. Now it's everywhere.
So
If
from the time that you were a little kid
mhm.
till today, has, as a matter of fact, positive, to the affirmative or not, I'm coming at it in a slightly different angle to see,
Mhm.
from when you were a kid till now, has the world become more or less chaotic, unhinged, and so on?
In some ways less chaotic, because we got to remember, when I was growing up, there was the Vietnam War, there was the Cold War, there was still live fire going on between North and South Korea. It was still a ceasefire, but they were still sniping at each other across the border. Every other African nation was having a revolution. Um, it was just, I mean, in Cambodia and Laos and all of that other good stuff, there was a lot of mayhem in the world. It's just that it was easier to turn it off or tune it out because you had limited sources.
Right.
I don't think there was ever a time of simplicity and serenity. Because if it wasn't going on overseas, it was happening with the civil rights marches down south, or it was happening with the protest marches locally against the Vietnam War and such.
Right.
And there were, I mean, we had similar things going on in the San Francisco Bay Area with the Black Panthers and so many different the XYZ Liberation Front and all this other kind of stuff. There was a lot of stuff going on, Zodiac Killer and all that other kind of crap. But again, you were only exposed to that if you tuned into the news. If you
Right.
switched the channel and were watching reruns of My Little Margie, you wouldn't even notice it.
Right.
So, and you don't have to look at a news source now, because if one of your friends in Oklahoma happens to be in a position to where he can shoot a video of a tornado going through and post that on Facebook, you don't have to go to the news to find out about a tornado in Oklahoma because your friend just told you,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So, but that's coming at us from all kinds of different directions, is what I'm getting at. The people you follow on Twitter, or the people you follow on Instagram or Facebook, or the YouTube channels that you watch, or friends who have YouTube channels. You know, it's easier to record the news, and it's easier to put the news out there in the public for public consumption.
So the
So,
difference. Well, this is what I was thinking earlier on. That's why I
mhm,
asked you all these questions, but I didn't get to it. It's basically you're saying, basically what I'm gonna say now, but you tell me when you're, and we've visited this thing throughout this conversation. Anyhow,
mhm,
just that I'm gonna put it in this context. When you're born into this world, we don't have the points of reference. We're not aware of all the news.
mhm,
We're basically innocent in terms of that,
mhm.
and other things, countless other things. We're a brand new book with no pages written on it,
Sure.
and that starting point and those that journey starts to write stuff on it. But from our perspective as a human being, not from the perspective of the world as a whole, as you progress, life does become more complex, more problematic, this and that. But that's from our individual starting points, and so
Mhm,
we could fall into the illusion
mhm,
and think the opposite of what you said, of what you answered with, and say there's chaos and it's brimming and boiling over. It's just getting worse and worse. The world is getting more disorganized, but that's true in certain cases, topically speaking. If you look at, like, let's say one specific issue to another, you could say, well, back
mhm.
100 years ago, this wasn't happening in this place. You could make concessions based on individual factors, but
Yeah.
if you take the whole and say, well, is life and the world getting more screwed up in this, and that? The tempting thing to do is to say yes, but the problem, the reason that I would say yes,
Mhm,
well, I'll finish with this and see what you say. The problem is of why I would say yes, while even knowing that it's not true in terms of factual, but is because that's the access of stuff like what you were saying that we have,
mhm.
news and this and that, and the fact that I've grown older and there's more information in my head to
Mhm.
reference. When I was a kid, if you would have asked me, I would have said, "Let's go to Toys R Us. Forget all that."
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
How willing would you have been to go look at what was happening in 1967?
Right.
Probably not at all, because
Well,
that would mean going to the library and opening books. And when you're 6 or 7, who the hell wants to do that? You know, I got a bicycle. Leave me alone. So I'm
exactly.
trying to eat a Pop Tart here. All right. So
Yeah.
it, but um, I don't know. It's easy to say that yes, it's getting more chaotic, but I don't know that you can quantify chaos. Can you? Can you say, yes, it's more chaotic now than it is back then? I think as adults, we pay more attention to things than we did as kids.
Yeah.
But also, again, we have so much access. Now, I'm not naive. I don't think you can quantify chaos, but yes, I think it may be more chaotic in certain ways.
Right.
Um, for instance, if I think back to the 60s and 70s, people worked a 40-hour a week job. They weren't all in offices, in partitioned little cubicles, working 60 hours a week.
Right.
Not everybody was going into debt to try to go to college. College was there if you wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a chemist, a scientist.
Mortician.
That's what college was there for.
Right.
It wasn't there to give you an associate's in 17th century Javanese goat herder poetry, you know. So not everybody went to college. And in fact, very few, a very low percentage went to college. Most people went into blue collar jobs. They were electricians, or they were construction, or they worked on an assembly line in a factory or something like that. So, you know, I think we bring a lot of chaos on ourselves because we got to get up at 5 in the morning so we can get out into traffic at 6 in the morning so we can get through the traffic jam with everybody else in the world to get to work at 7:30 to start our shift at 8.
Right.
You know, so our lives may seem more chaotic
Yeah.
because oh, and Susie's got ballet, and then Freddie's got soccer practice. And when I was a kid, I can remember uh, one of my friends. I lived in a cul-de-sac, and he lived out on the main road that you turned off of to get to my cul-de-sac, about a block away from me. I'd see him walking down the street in his baseball gear with his cleats on his shoulders, wearing tennis shoes. His parents weren't driving him to baseball practice. His parents didn't even go to baseball practice. And they certainly weren't buying pizza for the whole team. You know,
Right.
you went and you did that. They'd go to the games, but they didn't go to practice. You
Yeah.
know,
So let
so
me let me add this, or it we're still floating in the same area, but I think that that's more accurate
mhm,
how you're describing, and I agree. We've been agreeing in this. Let me reword it, or at least my
okay,
perception of this thing. So our perceptions,
mhm,
based on like today, based on all those factors that you were mentioning and others we haven't talked about, we
mhm,
have input that's really allowing us to be aware of so many different variations of stuff that might not be pleasant.
mhm.
Because who wants a war? Who
Yeah,
wants, who wants people like
exactly.
even if you have enemies, who wants like
Live and let live, man.
in general, I don't know, I can't say for everybody, but like the general thing is to try to maximize well-being, kind of, sort of. So, but we have all these little windows that we now have access to. When we were young, we didn't have all that extra material like cleats over the shoulder, walking to
Mhm,
baseball practice. That's the thing. But here's what I want to sort of figure out how do I can cause add our today existence, Mark. I want to liken it to the paradigm that you and I and everybody else inhabits. Let me make sense of this. The map of the world that we've created. This is just the same saying the same thing. The map of the world that we've created based on the information input has expanded. We've charted a bigger map of stuff
yeah.
that we're aware of.
Oh,
So,
definitely.
so we can unfold our maps, and it's not like we can avoid a lot of it. We can, but we have the information. You are aware that there's issues in the Middle East. You are
Mhm,
aware that over here this is happening. You literally are aware of it, and once
mhm.
you're aware of it, your map keeps getting written on. Whereas when you were young, Mark, you had a small map with a chart heading
Yeah,
towards the public park, or maybe to
yeah.
the store you like.
Um,
It's a smaller map.
yeah.
And so that means less confusion and to do. Well, here's the thing. I don't know if this is going to make a good sense or argument or anything like that, but let me see. I'm going to throw it out poorly, and you sort of see what you say. Um, there's no reason. This might be all screwed up, so there's no. I'm just going to go with it. There's no reason why we couldn't put our foot down, so to speak. And even though we have all the extra stuff, which I don't know that we can get rid of anyways, because once you know, you know. But we could do something equivalent to paying no mind and simplifying and capturing some of that earlier innocence in terms of burden, just tossing it to the side, even though we know it's there, but we can't. This kind of speaks to your same thing that one time when you were talking about what if aliens came, or I don't know what the scenario was, and you said, "Well, I just got to keep, I gotta still got to live." Um, it is similar in that world, what we're talking about.
Hmm.
You, in theory, you could throw off as much of that baggage.
Hmm.
You know it's there, but just simply pay it no mind and just go about the business of the things that you enjoy without these extra, burdens and stuff, and whatever that might mean to each individual person. Um, and that would be something of pulling the real, the line back in, though imperfect, because you still carry the fact that you're aware.
Hmm.
Um, but what difference would it make? This is goes to your question. At the end of the day, it's not like because you know that something's happening in the Middle East makes a difference of whether the Middle East is going to say, "Oh, you know what? Mark is not going to pay attention to us now, so we're going to
Yeah,
quit
let's
doing what
back
we're
off. Yeah, we need to find something else to do. Mark's not watching.
right,"
Yeah.
or vice versa. Mark's
Hmm.
paying attention. Let's up the ante over here,
Yep.
so that we can keep Mark entertained.
Yeah.
Anyways, I said that imperfectly. What do you take from that, or
Well,
what
I
do you
take
think?
what I take from that is that that's exactly what I do. I unplugged from the television. I have unplugged from the um, the 24-hour news cycle. I don't bury my head in the sand. There are certain times a day that I will seek out information to see what's going on in the world. But let's take the Middle East for example. It's been going on since before you and I were even thought of, let alone born. It does nobody any good for me to get all worked up over it. The only thing it does is raise my blood pressure and the blood pressure of the people around me because they got to put up with me. So it does absolutely no good. I don't give them any I don't give them the attention that they want. You know, I don't watch the network news. I don't watch the cable companies. I research various different sources, the cable companies, the cable news networks is what I meant. I have several sources that I check. Some I like, some of them I don't like. But I figure by going through several sources, somewhere in all of that is the truth. You know,
Well, here's
and so it's just I don't know. I have unplugged and I have pulled back because I decided years ago that I was not going to let other people decide how happy I am and how content I am in my life. That's for Linda and I to decide. We decide how happy we are. We decide how content we are. If we're not content, if we need to do something, then we work on it and we do it. That's the only thing that's going to make us happier. And the rest of the world be damned. You know,
yeah.
me getting upset about um, the the Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda doesn't benefit anybody. So I'm not, yeah, I care, but I'm not going to eat my heart out over it.
right. The fact that we, going back to being exposed to easy access to information,
Mhm.
and the fact that you as yourself, so you're, so even though we are two people, all of us are a handful of people in the context of this side of the world,
Mhm.
in country, Jim's case up north. Um, the fact that we are pinpoints on that map, and and we review the world around us. I'll say me. I could get fooled, but so I could get fooled by the fact. So there's 330 plus million people living in the United States, citizens. Um, I believe it's citizens. I don't know that includes, but whatever. 300 plus million people. Um, that's a truckload of people accessing, let's say, a tornado in Oklahoma.
Mhm.
Yes, we don't want that tornado to happen and stuff, but whether or not we have access to the knowledge of that
Mhm.
makes no difference, other than whether we other other than we know there's a tornado or we don't know there's a tornado.
Mhm.
If we don't know there's a tornado, we're none the wiser. If we know there's a tornado, there's still nothing that, like for instance, me here in Miami
Mhm.
could do about it, even though if I had the ability for it not to happen,
Mhm.
I would think that I would say, well, I don't want it to happen, and so don't happen. But you don't, as humans, we don't we don't have the ability to. But there's a catch to that. So this is the position that you're basically going at, without dropping, and that I am agreeing with, without dropping the fact that we care about, the general well-being of other people,
Yeah.
and there's all these like
Yeah,
the,
I'm not a callous son of a bitch. I do have empathy. I just don't know what I can do about it.
right. So, but there's also a caveat to that.
Mhm.
So one is there's this,
Mhm.
and which we're speaking about. But on the other hand, which is maybe a little bit more abstract, but not necessarily, is the point that I had made earlier, back a few months or whenever that was, where if if Mark Lindsay were, this is abstract, but whatever. If Mark Lindsay were sometime in 1786
Mhm.
on the cuffs of, um, liberating the colonies from the British, and you were positioned in any situation that your actions would contribute to supplies or some sort of strategy before the dawn
Mhm.
and all that, um, you would be necessary in that
Mhm.
position at that time with that
Well,
expectation,
sure.
because there's a ripple effect of what you would, um, what I'm getting at is that we want to do good, or we want things to turn out right. Many of us, not only for
Mhm.
ourselves but for other people. But there's a limit to that. Um, and this worrying thing, or
Right.
watching chaos grow
Mhm. And getting upset about it.
and getting upset about it,
And
are natural things, though, because if you see something that's upsetting, the natural reaction to seeing something upsetting
well, sure.
is to be upset about it, because that's an upsetting thing that you just saw.
Sure.
But if you remove the, oh, you have something to say, go ahead.
Yes, but there's a difference in getting upset about something that you see. If I see that there was a train crack, a train collision in China, and 1,000 people died, for example, getting upset about the fact that 1,000 people lost their lives, yes, I'm empathetic. I do have empathy. Man, that sucks. But I'm not going to lash out at somebody over it. I'm not holding people responsible for that. That's not my position. That's not my place. I'm just not that important, you know? That's for them to solve. If my neighbor's house catches on fire, you can be damn sure I'm over there seeing if they're out of that place. I've already called 911, but you can be damn sure that I'm over there at least seeing is everybody out of there. Get
Right.
over into my house, let's do what we can. Elizabeth, you get over there in the house, take the dog with you. Me and the old man, we've got the garden hoses going. The fire department's on their way. That's something that I can do something about. That's
Right.
something that is within my power to at least try to help or assist. But if a tornado touches down in Oklahoma, I mean, I can send money to the Red Cross.
Right.
I can donate to charities, but
Right.
that's about all I can do
Yeah.
from 11 states away.
Yeah. The fact of you knowing and not or not knowing,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing removes that burden of that negative that you're enabled to control.
Yeah.
And if you add enough of those negatives that you're unable to control,
Mm-hmm.
you end up with a lot of baggage carrying around.
Exactly.
But
Especially, this is especially true if you make a steady diet of it.
right,
Back when CNN ran headline news and it was all news headlines for 30 minutes on a 30-minute cycle. I know people who kept that on full time, and they were some of the most unpleasant people to be around
well,
because they took everything that those people talked about personally.
yeah, well, it becomes a form of it becomes a paradigm and a cycle that one gets into. But here's a further thing, that one gets attached to. It becomes part of your paradigm, and you operate with that as a reality. You start to incorporate that into a reality that's personal,
Mhm. Exactly.
because it's very difficult for us as human beings. Like, for instance, an image is a very powerful thing. So
Sure.
I was thumbing through Facebook, and I can see explosions, I can see all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I can't see is when a person hurts a animal,
Yeah.
stuff
I'm
like that.
with you. I'm with
It
you.
it it will spark fury,
Yeah.
fury.
I'm with
And
you.
I was thumbing through it, or thumbing through videos, and I landed on one. The title said, Man goes up to cat and blah blah blah," and I went like this, swipe quick. I didn't even want to catch a glimpse
Hmm.
of it. This is just me, my thing. I didn't even want to catch a glimpse of it. It
Yep.
already pissed me off, and I
Yep.
went like that quickly. And so, but well, here's the thing. That video, whatever that would have been,
Hmm.
which it was hinting at something that I would have been pissed off anyhow.
Hmm.
It's something detached from me in a sense. But what it's doing to me, it's presenting me with something that, see, I'm not in that area. I don't even know where the heck that happened.
Hmm.
I don't even, and in terms of cats, there is barbecue places somewhere. Parts of the world.
Yeah.
So there's this whole world of all these situations. But once that thought that they're trying to dish out came in contact with my window of
Hmm.
observation, I quickly, immediately internalized it as a direct link to my judgment, saying
Hmm.
evil, and um. But the reality is, and the jury's out on that still. The reality is, with that caveat, I'm nowhere's near
No.
in contact with that for me to even be available to do any different, or even I'm just watching imagery and yet it
Dude,
touches me. That's the power
and
of
that's
media.
empathy. And
Hmm.
that's what certain people play on.
Okay, yeah, because I want to focus on, of course, but I want to focus on the fact of how this distant thing that has certain context to it that I'm not attached to in terms
It
of
you don't have to be attached. That's when it struck your sense of empathy
right,
hard in such a way
right,
that somebody would do something to a defenseless creature
right,
that totally just offended every moral fiber in your being.
right.
I'm with you. I'm
But
with
but
you wholeheartedly.
but the angle that I want to touch is that yes, it reached my view, but in reality, although that's reality because it reached my view
Sure.
and I felt it, so
Hmm.
that's a real aspect. But in terms of the material aspects of it, like I'm
Hmm.
not in the same place.
No,
I don't know even what the hell the thing is. I don't,
right.
you know,
Don't even know if that was clickbait titling and it was something entirely different.
right. And yet, and yet, I had that reaction. So what I'm suggesting is this: that this media thing and this news cycle that you were talking about is so powerful,
Hmm.
and they have to know this to
They
a
do.
fault.
They know it.
And this is how oceans of people are shifted in one direction and the other
Hmm.
as best as they can have it. There's always outliers, but the point is that this is the things that we were contending with. And the final thing I wanted to say, these are just observations. It's not like I have any answers other than,
No,
but
there are no answers.
but the other thing that I wanted to say, I forgot. I forgot. I had something coming,
But
but
while you're thinking of it, yes, they know about it. Yes, they know it works, and in fact, they bank on it. They bank on it.
I
They're
remember.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I remember.
That's fine.
We at the other extreme or other end of
Hmm.
this return to innocence that I'm calling it, or simplicity, let's say, or just putting it out of sight, out of mind, let's say,
Hmm.
is dependent on all these factors and have us having access or putting it away consciously, making the
Hmm.
effort to put that away. But one thing that I'm not sure that we can do is to remove the collected map information that we've already
No,
gathered.
we can't. No, you can't. There are
Right,
certain things that you know. There are certain
yeah,
things you wish you didn't know, and there are certain things you wish you knew more about.
right,
But once you learn something, you can't unlearn it.
right.
It can get fuzzy the further you get away from it.
But you know it exists.
I took Spanish in junior high school. I can get fed and I can get in trouble. And that's about it. Oh, and I can find out what time it is. Que hora es? That's the kind of thing.
Right.
But um, so you, I didn't unlearn it. I just forgot it. But what you can do is remember that the only thing you can control is your reaction to it. And that's what I have to do to keep myself sane. Uh, Jim's got some every once in a while, Jim, you come up with some profound stuff. My desire to be informed is in direct conflict with my desire to stay sane. Absolutely. I don't watch network news. I don't watch CNN. I don't watch Fox. I don't watch any of those. I have not sat down in front of the TV for more than 10 minutes at a time since about the time you and I met. And then the last TV show that I watched all the way through was Antiques Roadshow. I had whittled it all the way down to that. I have other ways of being entertained. And that stuff just basically, I decided that I was putting myself in through too much crap under the guise of, I want to stay informed. You can stay informed without making it a steady diet.
Yeah, but this is dependent on the individual.
It is 100%. And as long as we continue to participate in that, we're going to continue, you want to return to a simpler time, take any one of those out of the equation. I'm not saying you don't have to watch the news. I'm not saying give it up cold turkey. Take one of those out of the equation. If you watch this channel's news, then this channel's news, then this channel's news, take one of them out.
Well, the
That's a start.
the issues also are individual maps,
Hmm.
um, that we've plotted, and then our insistence on. So, for instance, even though intellectually know that you're what you're saying, and I
Hmm.
understand the logic behind that,
Hmm.
I tend to continuously confront topics that, I'll say this way, I've been exploring certain things and I've been writing posts online
Hmm.
in my page.
Yeah.
And I've delved in to the psychology of why people post memes that are one-sided. It's so obviously, and I know that there's certain answers to it, but there's also underlying answers. My point is this: I've been engaged in trying to understand certain behaviors under the categories of certain topics and so on and so forth, and finding the hypocrisies and finding all these things and this and that. Okay, in my journey of doing this according to things that pop up and I look at and think about and try to answer the best way that this is solved,
Hmm.
I, as I'm involved in doing that, I'm actually two things. I'm actually receiving clarity
Hmm.
by being critical. I'm receiving clarity over the issues that I'm tackling at that moment. I'm not saying that I'm correct. I'm saying that I'm seeking clarity and the method that I use is what I use on this, whatever. But here's the thing: even so, that search or that study or that review that I'm doing is in itself a paradigm of which I'm in.
Hmm. Okay.
So basically, we can't escape paradigms. Even when we're discovering things within them, like, there's layers and layers of it. Um, but just as valid
Hmm.
would be doing any other number of things.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so I could be doing music right now
Hmm.
as opposed to questioning this issue, that issue, and that and that.
Well, but see, that's up to you to decide which is more rewarding to you. I'm not saying cut out the news or anything like that. A lot of people get entertainment out of that. And okay, a lot of people get entertainment out of debating and arguing points back and forth. I don't, but I can see where you might find that entertaining and you might want to do that. Okay, fine, great.
I've
But
asked AI. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
but my thing is when you lash out at somebody or start wanting to get destructive, now we've got a line. And if you're not happy with it, why do it? If you get less and less enjoyment out of something, why continue to do it? Just because that's what you've always done. To me, it's kind of like, I don't know, this is a bad metaphor, but it's kind of like, would you rather, you got to put up a wood fence. Would you rather pound every nail in that fence with a hammer, whacking your thumb about every 15th or 20th nail? Or
Or
would
have
you
a
rather
robot.
just go grab a nail gun and put it up, bap, 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 move on to the next board, bap, 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 bap? You know, the path of least resistance is where I head these days. I'm fluid like that.
So it depends on what the specifics of where you're using the nail gun or
Hmm.
hammering by hand. It depends on the specifics of what.
Hmm.
Because as a general rule, in my paradigm, as far as I can tell, and it's hard to self-reflect these things because when you proceed to do the things that you do, it's natural for you from your perspective, even though you're in a cycle pattern, whatever that might be. It could be this news situation,
Hmm.
it could be what I'm talking about me reviewing what the thought process is of partisan politics or
Sure.
psychological this or that. All those things have validity in them because they're explorations available to human beings. And
Hmm.
like you've said in the past, there's also this thing about taste,
Hmm.
where, or not taste, but preference, where you're saying, well, I'd rather spend time doing this or that. Like there's all these
Yeah.
things.
And what you find rewarding, I think, is a big part of it as well.
Well, you could say that if you didn't find it reward, and by the way, rewarding could mean positive and negative. You could be rewarding yourself in the negative by doing whatever it is that you're doing.
And that's where I'm going. That's where I was going.
And it could still be a form of you receiving some sort of um confirmation, or
Well, but
satisfaction, or something like that, even if the reward is a negative one, in terms of it leaving you deflated, or any
but
number of things.
you know what I mean. We were talking about in context of watching the news on a 24-hour cycle or getting into music. Which do you find more gratifying? Which do you find more rewarding to you? Which gives you the most pleasure? Is what I'm getting
obviously
at.
obviously well, you're asking me direct. I was going in this is, but
Okay. Well,
directly.
but see that. But okay, I'll take you out of the equation. I didn't mean to address you personally. I
No,
meant
but I'll answer it though.
in this whole great grand scheme of things, if you get pleasure from researching butterflies, then research away, my friend. If you know it.
Let me answer this.
Mhm.
The issue is not only the seeking. Okay, the the problem is not just the aspect of whether or not something is pleasurable, and that therefore that's what you're doing, or why you're doing it. This is
Mhm.
one aspect, but there are layers of things that we do that we're not deciding based on pleasure or not. It's based on this cycle that humans fall in, where, just like seeing things it's the similar thing as you see an event in your face through a screen that's not localized, in terms of the
Mhm.
event didn't happen here, it happened somewhere in China, let's say,
Mhm.
but you're immediately affected by it because you are a receiver,
Mhm.
and the media is there. So
And
it's not necessarily, now you do say turn it off, but not
mhm.
everybody is not everybody is at the turn it off level, depending on any number of subtopics, or sub issues going on with people. So in other words, you
and
have
I'm not
found
and I and
in,
I'm not
in,
under any illusions.
in other words, you have found an off switch according to your methods and your
Mhm.
conclusions, and so on and so forth, and that does a certain thing in your paradigm
Mhm.
that you have, where it shuts the thing off and on. Other people may have an off and on, so, and other people may not,
Well,
depending
of
on the
course.
category of the thing. Well, because based on this complexity of people having different methods and so on, paradigms under each topic, it's almost difficult for you, someone like yourself, to say to a person that's very worried over one issue or the next, to say, look, there's this button and you turn it off. That person um, could be totally irrational, and they're like, ah, or on the more normal level of it, could hear you. You're telling them that there's a button. Look, dude, the button off. You can turn it on later, or don't do it at all. Or, but there's a button. Here's where it's at, dude. That person, based on what they've accepted as architectural foundations of what they understand in life and what's important, may hear you speaking English.
Mhm.
It doesn't register.
I understand that, and I'm under no illusions about that. You asked about returning to a more innocent time or backing away. I'm telling you how I did it for me, and it works for me. And I speak only
Yeah.
for myself. It may not work for anybody else.
Well, that's
But
and
but
that
do you know until you give it a shot? I mean, think about it. That's why so many millions of people go camping. That's why so many millions of people go out and go sailing on a boat. That's why so many millions of people go on a vacation to a place they've never been before, travel to Europe or to Asia or wherever. It's
right.
to get away. We all need a getaway.
Let
It's
me let
just
me
my getaway has been for the last 14 years. That's all. That's the only difference.
let me put this context to it. Let me put this context to it. You can get away
Hmm.
in the ways that you've explained.
Hmm.
We have that figurative on-off switch
Hmm.
that we're using as a metaphor for not
Hmm.
viewing things and stuff.
Yep.
But what you can't get away from, because remember, and I'm focusing now on this question of paradigms and reality and the variations that exist in each person's mind.
I reject
But,
your reality and substitute my own.
but what you can't escape
Hmm.
is that you are ever present, and this is not as outrageous, but I'm trying to get a certain point. You can't escape that you are Mark Lindsay living in Oregon in that particular, and
Hmm.
down the street there's this particular store,
Yep.
and when you turn the corner over here, there's this rock that has this thing,
And
and
and I'm content with that.
oh, okay, but this is not where I'm going.
Hmm.
I understand that. Well,
Hmm.
well, we can say
See, so I feel no need to escape it, is what I'm saying.
no. I know, but I'm not okay. You don't question. Here's where I'm
Hmm.
getting at.
Hmm.
You don't question the store.
No,
You don't question the rock.
why would I?
You don't question, dude. Let me make the point.
No, I'm
I know.
agreeing with you. Go for it.
I'm not asking you to question those things. I'm trying to get to a thing.
Hmm.
You quickly said that those things are not a problem for you,
Hmm.
and I understand why. Because these are things that are just there. They're not
Yeah.
causing any. They're. But this is the thing of the paradigm that I'm trying to put out there as the concept. These things are not offensive to you because they're things that are stable and they're there and there's no one way or the other about it and
Yeah,
stuff.
I get it.
There are other things that like that people cannot distinguish from that you would point out as troubling, like that on off switch,
Hmm.
that they view it just like that grocery store, just like that rock that doesn't bother you. In other words, they're in this paradigm
To each
where
their own. Yeah.
certain well no, it's, I mean, yes, to a point, but no, at this level, that based on this media that we're talking about and this extra added art this extra added reality that people are fed,
Hmm.
that people accept because a voice of authority is coming into their preview, into
Hmm.
their window. They're hearing the information that's
I know
navigating them.
this.
No, well, but it's good to say it out loud. Um, these people, which could be just me, it could be you in another context, it could be
Yeah.
everybody, and it is everybody because we're human beings. We have this information flooding in.
Hmm.
Some people will accept the information wholeheartedly from
Oh yeah.
authority figure, because why wouldn't they trust that news anchor? Just like when you're driving down the road and you see that store's always been there, it
Hmm.
causes no harm, it's there for when I want to stop and buy some product or
Hmm.
whatever. um so the same thing applies for people in those terms too, as far as media, propaganda, and so on and so forth. They can't see forest from the trees, and I'm not excluding myself, mind you. I do make an effort, but even making an effort, I'm still Eloy, viewing the world and reacting to it according to my. I don't have your on and off button, let's say,
Hmm.
and I'll swim in certain little lakes and rivers,
Hmm.
that you might decide, well, it's not necessary, like these
It's not
variations,
my bag. Yeah.
right? But I'm saying that we all have these constructions
Hmm.
that we might not be aware that we don't need to, that we could turn that switch off.
And I think a lot of people forget that they are absolutely the ones that are in control. You know, there are we are in control of what we consume. That's why, for instance, I never played the blame game with McDonald's. Well, McDonald's and their supersized fries is the reason people are fat. No, the reason people are fat is lack of self control. They're a business. They're a restaurant. If you go order 25 Big Macs, they're going to sell them to you. That's what they do.
Can I push back on that half a sec?
Go right ahead.
I just want to say, I just if you could add or consider adding to that judgment of yours, the fact that just like what I was saying before, people turn on TV across the '80s and earlier and after, and they're seeing McDonald's commercials. And yes, it's upon them to have the fortitude to say nay, but in enough instances, it's the commercial is there because it works.
These are the same. Of course, it works. It gets people in the door, and that's their business. Their business is to try to sell as many hamburgers as they can.
Right,
That's their business.
right.
But it's not McDonald's fault that you ordered 20 hamburgers.
No, 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 no.
That's the same logic that said it was Twisted Sister's fault that some kid went out and threw a rock through a windshield of a car. The same people who say that advertising on TV caused little Johnny to do this are the same people who said that rock and roll music was the cause of all of the world's troubles. It's the
Let me
same argument. It's just two different
yeah,
paths. You see what I'm getting
let
at?
me push back on that. Let me push back on that. I think it's very sound to say, as a matter of fact, that commercials contribute to people suspending their critical analysis of whether they should or shouldn't for the pleasure at the moment. In other words, they're not going to bypass. Well, wait a second. Why are commercials? Why bother spending the millions and millions each year to promote any product if it's not to get people on your side? When it comes to food,
Mhm.
McDonald's and the commercials and so forth have been there to condition people. That's what advertising is, to make you trust so when you think of McDonald's, when I think of McDonald's, I think of a stable list of food. I don't particularly like it much anymore,
I don't either.
but that's not the point. The point is, across my life, they created through propaganda. In my mind, they
Mhm.
created categories that reference they defined
Mhm.
themselves, and so in other words, I'm not criticizing that they're looking for a buck and this and that and that. I'm not. That's none of my. What I'm saying is that as a reality attached to this decision making that you're saying, which ultimately is in the hands of the person, there are
Right.
people that can. That granted, we have the ability to get up,
Well, there
talk,
are
and
always
make.
going to be people that are easily led, dude.
No, but it's not okay. It's not that there are people that. What I'm getting at is this: we're all victims of being individual human beings with the limitations of a human being, and propaganda is one of the tools that accesses our brains. Mind you, all the while we have all the ability to, but all the surrounding conditions, this is what they use in order to draw us into them. I'm not calling negative or positive in that per se. I'm saying that this is what happens. This is
And
why
that's their
commercials exist.
job. Their job is to sell burgers. And that's what I mean when I say if you walk into McDonald's and you order 20 hamburgers, they will sell them to you. That's what they do. That's their job. It's your job to know that sitting around eating 20 hamburgers is probably a bad idea. That's your job. And yes, there are people who lose that. I mean, dude, you ever had a Little Caesars pizza?
It's been a while, but yeah.
Not exactly five-star dining, would you say?
No, it's no.
But you don't every once in a while just say, you know what? I haven't had a Little Caesars pizza in like 10 years. Let me go get one.
Well, not me, but I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what would possess me to go down to Little Caesars. But you know what? It's right down the block. The pizza's ready right now, and it's $6. If I'm hungry right now, I've got that. I could go do that if I want to. It's up to me not to eat the whole damn thing. They're going to sell me the pizza. and
right.
it's not their
No,
fault.
I understand. So you do understand. I've not only conceded,
Hmm.
agreed with from the beginning
Yeah.
that the individual has the autonomy, you
Hmm.
yourself and me. Like, I
Yeah.
don't go to Publix, and if Publix, let me say it this way. So I'm not even like I agree. I'm just saying that, hey, this is what's happening, and these things do influence individuals, and
Hmm.
in the grand scale, this is how
Hmm.
they move populations into their products and such. And
Sure.
everything has this element now. But
Hmm.
I'll make a point. Similarly to months ago or years ago, I don't even know what the time frame is,
Hmm.
where we were all talking about food and snacks and such,
Yeah.
and somebody brought up something about pretzels,
Uh-huh.
Schneider's pretzels, long
Yeah.
ago. I
Yeah.
don't know if it was you or Steve.
It could have been either one of us or both of us.
It could have been everybody. They're so damn good. Um, Somebody brought up Schneider's.
Uh-huh.
We all were sitting here talking. I was doing
Hmm.
my, you were doing yours. Everybody was normal, this and that. And then we closed that session and off we went. The next time we got together, I said, dude, I was walking through the thing. Remember? Do you remember more
I
or
do
less?
remember it. And you grabbed the bag.
But you want to know what's crazy?
No?
I go to Publix. I'll go out of my, like, if I gotta go to Walmart and they don't have the one that I want, I I I will make the second stop to get myself the Schneider's pretzels that I want. So here's what I'm getting at. Your guys' food recollections and fond memories
Hmm.
affected me. I am quite an independent person. Not me, he said. So it was probably Mark's doing. Um, I am quite the independent thinker,
Hmm.
but there's a caveat to that, which I've been insisting on all this time, that no matter how precise,
Hmm.
we still we still suffer, or we
Right.
still are encapsulated within the housing of and the abilities that humans have. And one of those things is that we have suggestions offered us,
Yeah.
and we rotate in that direction.
Right.
We're
But
human.
the difference is you stood up one day and said, I'm overweight. I don't like it. What'd you do? You got on your bike and you started taking Vigo for walks and you started working some of that off.
I've
Am
gained a
I-
little bit of it, by the way. Or
But the
like,
thing is, you realized this isn't working out. This isn't good for me. I can't do this. When was the last time you went to Publix and got a big old, pint container of clam chowder?
I've not done that in quite a long time. Well,
But
it's
there was,
probably been a few months. I
but
did do
you,
it
but
once.
there was a time where you were doing it like once a week.
Yeah.
So, but that's what I'm getting at. See, you saw something getting out of control and you curtailed it. You took personal responsibility and you put in the effort to work off what you had put on yourself.
Yeah, we've
That
had,
is part of the decision making process. You know,
and I
I'm
agree with that.
and I'm not saying don't go to McDonald's. I'm saying realize that this is not a steady, it never was meant to be a steady diet.
Yeah, I gotta throw this in. The only problem that I have, or not problem, but the only thing that I'd like to point out is that key word you just used, which is realize.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not food. We are adding food as a fill-in for any number of things. It could be
Yeah.
the news. It could be this, that, and the
Mm-hmm.
other.
Yep.
We're just using food right now, um, as the thing to focus on, but it could
Mm-hmm.
apply.
Yep.
The thing is this aspect that you said about realizing.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you could tell me something
Mm-hmm.
like the on and off switch that were also
Sure.
figurative. You could tell me that, and
Mm-hmm.
I can hear the words, connect a sentence, understand the context.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's no extra measure, and the extra measures, I'm not even talking about acting upon your suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about something between something be, the difference between somebody not getting it and getting it, whether it's worth it to them or not, is their choice. But the space between your telling them, a
Hmm.
gap in between, and then acting one way or the next,
Dude,
that middle space, what those variables are in there, are they capturing what you're saying and
I, I
properly giving it the thing?
I know because I lived it. When I started pulling away and I started flipping that switch, I was 49 years old. I went 49 years, but that switch, that bitch was stuck in the on position. And I consumed. And it wasn't until I was 49 years old, I'm like, what is this doing to me? What am I doing other than alienating every person I meet? You know, I was not a nice person. The person I'm today right now is not who I was 14 years ago. So I'm here to tell you, man, and Linda can vouch for that. But um, no, it wasn't Steve with the pretzels. And you want to talk about the power of suggestion? Steve has got a candy rack behind him that there are convenience stores that are envious of the candy rack Steve has. I ain't kidding you. And I thought, ooh, he has those. I haven't had those in a long time. And I went for a long time. I was buying 2 pound bags of Reese's cups. I was buying, the little orange sticks or raspberry sticks that's a gelatin jelly like and coated in chocolate. And I was buying bags of Maltesers and coffee crisp candy bar. I went on a candy binge for about a year.
Yeah,
I can't do that no more, man. I haven't done that in a while. We still buy candy on occasion. This is going to blow Linda's mind because she remembers the last time we went to this grocery store. I still have one bag of Maltesers from when I went to that grocery store. It's been about 2 weeks. So
yeah. There's pleasure in having it there,
there,
though.
right, but it's moderation. I'm in control of when I open that bag.
You're in control of that bag of Maltesers,
I am
and don't
100%.
let anybody say different.
I'm in control. It's still here. The other three aren't, but this one's still here.
Well, the
But
fact that you can have it at any given moment, but it's there,
mhm,
like that happens with me, and because there's these things called Reese's sticks.
mhm,
I don't know if
yeah,
you've come across
yes.
them.
Mhm.
Have you tried them?
No, I haven't tried them yet.
Don't try them because that will. Well, I don't know how your affinity would be, but towards it. But let me tell you something right
Mhm.
now, and I'm not soft. So I'm not softening this one for anybody. Those things are so freaking addictive.
Yes.
You know those wafers? Remember those
Mhm.
thin? It's kind of like that, but with the Reese's thing,
Mhm.
dude. It's like magic in a little bar. Magic in a little bar is freaking awesome.
That's what I think of Maltesers. It's magic in a little chocolate covered ball.
It's unbelievable, dude.
Yeah.
Let me say this last thing, and I guess we'll
Yeah,
we'll
we
skip
need to
ahead.
land the plane. We've gone long.
So I'll just say this last thing. When it comes to these burning questions that are disturbing, when it comes to news and stuff, like
Mhm.
the way you approached it and decided to solve for it by reducing the level and this and that. I too, well, especially when we talk in the background, I
Mhm.
can get animated, but that's just between you and me in a
Mhm.
individual conversation. Um, but
Sure.
like there'll be things that I'm outraged about, like how can this
Oh,
be or
me
that
too.
be and this and that. But so there's a little bit of venting involved in that. But what I've discovered personally for myself in viewing these issues, just as an overview of what I've been doing, and I hope it's somewhat evident when people read the posts that I if they do they see it.
Mhm.
I'm not viewing the thing from a place of I'm viewing the thing from a place of analysis of what's going on between the various groups involved in an issue, and
Mhm.
I'm placing myself. What I'm doing is like I'm walking outside of Rome, the city of Rome. I'm
Hmm.
walking up the hill and I'm sitting my ass on the top of the hill and I'm looking down at the landscape and the people and watching what they're doing. I'm removing myself to the degree that I can, although I have my preference, but I'm removing myself and I'm looking to see the conditions that are creating a particular context that's occurring. So I'm taking it instead of putting myself in the fire, in a sense, I'm separating myself and looking and seeing where fault is across the board and not picking favorites, although I have favorites, but I'm trying to separate that. And I think I've been doing a good. I feel that I'm not as. I think that I'm more balanced with it. So in doing that, if that makes sense or not, I don't know. But in doing that, it eliminates a lot of the burden. Uh, not all of it, but a lot of the burden when looking at these political things. Let's say,
Hmm.
because you're no longer saying, "Well, I'm on Team X, and so Team Y." I'm gonna ignore my. I'm looking at the whole thing and saying that's wrong. That's wrong. Based on what? Based on this thoughtful thing and this and that. Could I be wrong? So I'm looking at it as an observer, and with those added context of like we're really along for the ride anyhow.
Hmm.
So I'm doing a separate thing. I feel that that still doesn't remove me with the on and off switch, like you're saying.
Hmm.
It's not, but it is a separation to look at it more analytical and a little bit
No.
less in the fire. Let's say,
Hmm.
um, just take that for what it's worth, grain of salt. That's my trying to describe what I'm doing. I'm sure there's more to it than that, but that's kind of the idea.
But if it gives you pleasure, and if it satisfies your curiosity, and if you enjoy the exploration, you don't have to justify it to anybody.
No, I'm saying it out
You
loud
know.
because it helps me also, and saying I think it's worth.
Hmm.
Yes, it's whatever your choice is your choice. You're right
Hmm.
that whatever is pleasurable for you or
Sure.
meaningful or this or that, go for it. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be an on off switch. It could
No.
be a dimmer.
Hmm. And it
It could be,
doesn't even have to be a switch. It can be one of those, like you said, the dimmer,
yeah,
or it could just be on all the time.
or off.
It it it's whatever, you know, I'm a live and let live kind of guy. And if you get enjoyment doing that, more power to you, man.
Yeah, I like the construction behind the scaffolding. I like
Mm-hmm.
to look at that because when you look at the scaffolding of things, you really start to pick out where the weak spots are.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter that when it comes to these things, it doesn't matter the topic.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the topic is important, but the undergirding sort of support
Mm-hmm.
systems of of whatever it is that one is looking at topic wise,
Mm-hmm.
um, when the foundations of an argument or a position or this
Mm-hmm.
are weak, if you look at the foundations as opposed to the whatever the fun topic might be, you can avoid a lot of the ache and just look at it for the subcontext of it, which is, you know, clarifying. So I've been doing that and it's been
Mm-hmm.
very helpful actually. But
Okay.
um and it's let me remove myself, oh well this is hypocrisy and that's hypocrisy. I'm not inventing that it's hypocrisy. Look at the contradiction here.
Mm-hmm.
That's hypocrisy. um so I'm looking at it and like just from the side or from the top of the hill and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
um I don't know that I'm not, no, scratch that. Either way, I'm still in my own paradigm,
Mm-hmm.
locked in that world view, whatever that might be, even while I'm examining. So I recognize that we're in a maze, and whatever we want to direct our attention to, like we've been explaining, that's just part of the little run through
Right.
the maze.
But
But there's another corridor down the way,
but
endlessly.
yes, exactly, and that's what I was gonna say. In that you can always change your focus. We do it
Yeah.
all the time. We do it all the time. So we may think we're locked into something, or that we've, you said it yourself, fallen into something. we can just as easily climb out. Let me back off that. We can just as simply climb out.
But we
Something may be simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy.
but we do need to be. Well, I don't know if this is true, but I think that there's a part of we need to also have in order to see an error,
Mhm.
we have to. That means we have to have some humility to recognize that. Oh
Yes.
well, I'm screwed. I've screwed up here
And own up to your errors.
and own up to it. That's not easy, dude.
No, it's not. It's not easy to admit that you're wrong, especially to yourself.
Especially to yourself. It's very, very difficult. Um, Fair enough. That was a good exploration, in my opinion.
Yep. So
Uh,
be good to yourself, but be honest with yourself.
Well, yeah, or try. Yeah, I'm always trying to. Yeah, if you can manage it, that would be a good idea. All right, we go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30
Usually.
Pacific, 6:30 Pacific Coast time. Not this week because I was all beat to heck and had to rest. But thank you for derailing me.
It's my job. It's what I do.
Disrailing me. Don't
Disraeli.
don't disraeli gears me.
I disrailed your gears.
Um,
If you
so
know, you know.
we have this YouTube channel, Trampled Underfoot podcast on YouTube. So check that out every Tuesday. We also have a Facebook page, which is Trampled Underfoot
Oops.
podcast over on Facebook. We place videos and posts about things we talk about in the show. So it's interesting. Go check it out. And we also have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com, where you can download our past episodes and nothing. Check it out. We're also sponsored by.
Harneil Media, the Candy Man. He not only can, he will, and he does it quite well. If you're even thinking about setting up a website, maybe you want to set up a web store, maybe you want to design some merch and put that merch out for the public at large. Steve's your man. He'll do it just as much or as little as you would like for him to do, but he'll do it well. He's very, very competitively priced. You'll wonder how he gets away with charging so little after a while. I'm telling you what. And it's 100% personalized service. When you deal with Harneil Media, you deal with Steve, not some nameless, faceless person in a call center somewhere. So do yourself a favor. You'll find a link to harneilmedia.com in the description of everything on this YouTube channel. So get down there, click on that link, hit that contact us link, and shoot Steve a message. He'll work with you. That's Harneil Media, HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of Trampled Underfoot podcast.com.
All right. Excellent. Guys, that's the show for this evening. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'm actually quite beat up right now, too. But enjoy the rest of the week. Go out there, go to the discotheques, dance on the tables, but do it safely, you know. And we'll be back here next week. So, peace out to you.
Be good. If you can't be good, be careful. If you can't be careful, don't name it after us.